Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Hope we're all having a great and wonderful day. And it seems that the Democratic Party is always in the great free fall. And it seems that they're always getting hit after hit after hit as for the past few months. Maybe probably because they're as corrupt as they can come. Well, now we have this, where MSNBC and Rachel Maddow is now being sued for $30 million because they were lying. Here, what we have here from the Washington Free Beacons goes on to say, Rachel Maddow and her co-stars made verifiably false statements about a doctor they call the uterus collector. Now his $30 million lawsuit is headed for trial. NBC Universal is headed for a trial after a judge ruled in favor of a Georgia doctor whose MSNBC's biggest stars accused of performing mass hysterectomies on women at Trump-era immigration facility in Georgia. No, that's what a lot of the other far left, what you would call trans doctors do. They're the ones that perform mass hysterectomies on children, and perhaps maybe you guys should stop that, That might be a good start. The judge ruled that Rachel Maddow, Nicole Wallace, and Horace Hayes made verifiably false statements about the doctor who is suing NBC for $30 million. The discovery process and the lawsuit, which has received little attention, has drawn back the curtain on the inner workings of MSNBC, revealing how the liberal cable network works hand-in-hand with NBC News, which seeks to portray itself as a nonpartisan. Which, MSNBC is the least nonpartisan news organization out there. They're borderline worse than CNN. NBC Universal's Standards Department reviewed and approved the reporting on the Georgia doctor before it was published on NBCNews.com and then broadcast on MSNBC programs. The NBC News correspondents Jacob Serberoff and Julia Ainsley worked closely with a standards executive during their reporting. Serberoff is also an MSNBC correspondent. Of course they are, because they all work with each other. Furthermore, Maddow, who was deposed for the lawsuit, and Hayes were personally involved in the off-camera vetting and editorial conversations around the segment to an extent that can be unusual for an on-camera host. Maddow is reportedly paid about $30 million a year by NBC Universal hosts to host her show one evening a week and work on longer-range projects. In a ruling last month, the judge Lisa Godbee Wood of the Southern District of Georgia found that Maddow, Hayes, and Wallace made 39 verifiably false allegations about Mahendra Amin, a gynecologist who treated detainees at a Georgia Immigration and Customs Enforcement facility. A nurse at the facility had made a whistleblower complaint alleging that Amin was performing mass hysterectomies, many of which were medically unnecessary, and that he was known as the uterus collector. The nurse's claims, which she admitted were based on hearsay, were later found to be false. In the end, we are left with this. NBC investigated the whistleblower letter's accusations. That investigation did not corroborate the accusations and even undermined some NBC republished the letter's accusations anyway. That's because they don't do correct reporting. They never do it. They don't go further and investigative at all. It's the same thing with a lot of what the video I did earlier today. When you have all these news outlets, they tell you what's going on, but they don't tell you the full picture. They don't give you the full information. So, that being said, when they don't give you the full information, you're inclined to believe it. These guys are nefarious. They're propagandists. That's just what these media outlets are. And if you're going to listen to them, prepare to be fooled, prepare to be lied to. Because this is not like, if you're doing research and you're saying, oh, I got my information from the news, well, where did you get it from? If you got it from CNN or MSNBC or any of these other news media outlets, hell, even Fox News, you're not getting the correct information. Because it's all being verifiably false. And they'll run with it, not do their proper research or their investigative work, and run a series of lies so that way they can promote their propaganda. It's all normal. This is what they do. This is in their mantra. And it goes on to say that Wood wrote in a scathing 108 ruling on June 26, she ordered a jury trial to determine if the MSNBC engaged in actual malice, the standard to determine defamation. The discovery process revealed how MSNBC and NBC News journalists and executives acknowledged privately in text messages, emails, and conference calls that they didn't know if the allegations were true, but reported them anyway. The lawsuit could prove embarrassing to MSNBC, which bills itself the premier destination for news and informed perspectives. Communications obtained during the discovery process revealed that many executives and top journalists at the network had concerns about the whistleblower, but breathlessly reported her claims anyway. We just don't know if any of this is true. Chris Straw, a NBC News veteran who is NBC Universal's Deputy Director of Standards, said in a conference call with Hayes on September 16, 2020. According to notes released in the lawsuit, the evening before MSNBC had broadcast a story detailing claims from the whistleblower, Dawn Wooden, a former nurse at the ICE facility. The guy has a pretty clean record, Joel said of Emmett in the conference call. Joel added that Wooden has no direct knowledge of this stuff and kind of has a brief, though did not elaborate. Despite Joel's concerns, Hayes, Maddow, and Wallace aired several segments about Wooden's allegations on their evening MSNBC programs, sparking a Senate investigation into Ammon's activities. On her top-rated MSNBC show, Maddow quoted a detainee saying, "When I met all these women who had surgeries, I thought this was like an experimental concentration camp." Maddow went on to say, the nurse says she and her fellow nurses, quote, "questioned among ourselves like, goodness, he's taking everybody's stuff out that he's his specialty, he's the uterus collector. He's taking all the uteruses out or he's taking their tubes out." Ammon sued MSNBC for defamation in September 2021, denying that he had performed any unnecessary medical procedures. The Senate probe found no evidence that the physician had done so, and that contrary to the allegations, 2 hysterectomies he performed were deemed medically necessary by Immigration and Customs Enforcement. Since its hard left turn in the mid-2000s, MSNBC has sought to portray itself as a fully separate from NBC News, where it produces iconic programs like Today and Nightly News for NBC's broadcast channel and is also responsible for NBC News' digital operation. Ammon's lawsuit, however, reveals how NBC is in fact part and parcel of the broader NBC News operation. Sensitive stories at NBC News are supposed to be reviewed by NBC Universal Standards and Practice Department, of which Joel, a former NBC News producer, is an executive as a matter of procedure. Standards executives are supposed to loop in NBC News legal department if deemed necessary. It's not clear if NBC News attorneys were involved in vetting the segment. Ammon's lawsuit is the latest black eye for NBC News, which aggressively pushed several false narratives during the Trump administration, during which the cable network generated hundreds of millions of dollars in profits for NBC Universal and its parent company. Comcast, the liberal cable network, spent much of President Trump's tenure pushing the debunked Trump and Russia collusion narrative, including in dozens of segments on Maddow's program. MSNBC settled a defamation lawsuit from Nicholas Sandman after the network aired more than a dozen segments about the Kentucky high school students' confrontation with a Native American activist at the National Mall in 2019. MSNBC employees accused of Sandman of a hate crime, among other allegations. NBC News' involvement in reporting the uterus collector story began with a September 15, 2020 article by Ansley, a Homeland and Security reporter, Soboroff, who covers immigration issues for NBC News and MSNBC, and Daniel Silva, an NBC News and National reporter who covers immigration and education. The NBC News journalist obtained Wooden's whistleblower complaint and spoke with her for the story. The story stated that women are routinely being sent to a gynecologist who has left them bruised and performed unnecessary procedures, including hysterectomies. But emails and text messages revealed during the lawsuit's discovery phase show the reporters had lingering doubts about Wooden and about how many women underwent hysterectomies. Soboroff wrote in one text message that an immigration attorney he spoke with offered mixed feelings about Wooden, and Ainsley expressed concern at the small number of procedures Ammon was alleged to perform. Just 2 hysterectomies, Ainsley wrote to Soboroff on September 15, 2020. Maddow and Hayes also had early doubts about Wooden's claims. Hayes said he initially discounted the whole thing when he saw whistleblower allegations circulate on social media. Nevertheless, he interviewed Wooten on his show on September 15, 2020, in a segment entitled ICE Whistleblower Speaks Out, alleges his mass hysterectomies performed on migrant women. Hayes teased the interview with Wooten as shocking whistleblower allegations of atrocities at an ICE detention center, including forced hysterectomies on women who don't need them. In a conference call with Hayes the following day, Scholl, the MSNBC Standards executive, acknowledged they still had no idea whether Wooten's claims were accurate and whether or not Ammon was a good doctor or a crappy doctor. "We don't know the facts here," Scholl said. Hayes replied, right. Days after NBC's series of reports, dozens of Democratic senators called for an investigative investigation into Ammon and the ICE facility, but that probe failed to substantiate Wooten's claims. So, yeah. Essentially, they're being sued for $30 million and for lying. And this is what I'm saying, guys. They all lie. They don't tell the truth. And that is just the reality. It looks like they're in deep trouble. The liberal media is collapsing and falling as we speak. And a lot of these people, a lot of these liberal pundits are getting a dose of their own medicine. Maybe if you just stop lying, that might be a great start. And you might be able to, I don't know, rectify your news organization. But if you're going to lie and produce false information and all that stuff, then I guess you're going to have to just face the consequences sooner or later. And you are finally facing those consequences. Alright guys, that's it for the video. Like, subscribe, share. As always, take care, my friends.
I'm disgusted by what I see in public. Even people closest to us can't be trusted, 'cause it's algorithmic disease, the social media.